We are live on Facebook, and as soon as it hits 8:30, we can start.
Thanks, Brenda.
And it is now 8:30.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good to see everyone. I'm calling the combined meeting of the Operations, Audit, Finance, and Administration Committee meetings of the Bi-State Board to order. It's 8:30. Myra, will you please call the roll?
Commissioner Winmiller,
Present.
Commissioner Cox,
Here.
Commissioner Galladay,
Here.
Commissioner Brown,
Here.
Commissioner Beach,
Here.
Commissioner Zimmerman,
Here.
Commissioner Gully, Commissioner Simmons,
Here.
Commissioner Costello,
Present.
Commissioner Johnson.
Here.
Thank you. I'll move to item 3 on the agenda. Are there any speaker cards for public comment that have been received for today's meeting?
No speaker cards were presented.
Thank you. Item 4, approval of the minutes of the August 27th, 2020 combined Operations and Audit Committee meetings open meeting. Your minutes have been provided for review. A motion is needed to approve.
I so move.
Thank you. Thank you. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed?
I'd like to abstain.
And an abstention from Commissioner Cox. Thank you. Item number 5 is the contract modification, the time extension of the contract with WSP on the Metrolink station enhancements. I would like to ask Chris Paler for comments.
Chairman, good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
WSP was selected last year for the station enhancement projects. The goal of this project was to look at 5 stations, the downtown stations of Cleves Landing, Convention Center, 8th and Pine, as well as Forest Park to Bolivar and Delmar Loop stations. And again, the goal was to look at them and come up with recommended concepts for improving both the aesthetics as well as any safety or security concerns at the stations. These are stations all from the original alignment, showing their age. And so the goal was, again, to enhance those stations. It's kind of a 2-step process. We asked WSP to come up with concepts, and then we looked at the concepts and we discussed the potential concepts with our partners around the station. And then we ultimately zeroed in and told them which concepts we'd like to move forward with on each of the 5 stations. And they would take those concepts into the design phase. As it turned out, the concepts ended up being much more significant in scope than we had originally anticipated. So they're going to need more time to complete that design. They're going to take the designs to a point where they can comfortably give us firm cost estimates for the construction, and that'll be done in the next month or 2. And then we'll figure out which of the 5 stations we're going to want to move forward with at this time, depending on construction funding that we're able to identify. So this briefing paper just asking for an extension of time for the WSP contract to allow them to finish the design as well as provide construction phase services, and that's an additional 30 months. Once we come up with the concepts that we're going to move forward with, and which stations and which funding we have available, we'll be coming back to you in the next few months to talk about funding, any additional funding we need for design. Any questions?
Just one from me, Chris. So the extension of the time doesn't include any extension of the actual contractual amount at this period. It's just a time extension.
That's correct. We're hoping to do them both at the same time. They're not quite ready yet with the design to the 30% where they need to come up with a firm cost number. So we're just getting the time now, and again, probably in 2 more meetings, we'll be coming back to you with a request for additional costs once we decide which of the 5 stations, or if we want to move forward with the design of all of them and take them through construction.
Thank
What
you.
was the original time frame that we were dealing with? What was the original time frame?
The original contract was for a year, and then we've given
So
we given them 2 90-day extensions also.
Oh, but now we're breaking it out more than 2 years?
Correct.
Okay.
Again, the difference is really just the scope. When we looked at this project originally, we were thinking we're going to enhance the lighting, spruce up the stations. But one of the concepts that came up with, a lot of them are really good, especially like Forest Park to Bolivar and Delmar. And it will really help out both the aesthetics as well as the safety and security. So we think there's a lot of value in those. So again, the project is growing, but we think there's, again, great value in some of these. So we're going to move forward with those that we can based on the budget that we're able to find.
Madam Chairman, a question for Chris. Chris, is there any possibility of be shorter than the 30 months?
Yes, again, it's really tied to the funding and which of the 5 projects, if we're only able to move forward, let's say 2 or 3 of them, based on the funding we have available. So if we decide to move forward with 2 of them, let's say, and we can do them at the same time, yeah, it's certainly possible. This is what we think should be the maximum amount we'll need. But if we're not able to do all 5 or due to funding constraints, we're only able to do part of some of them, then it would probably be less. So we try to put in the full amount that we think is the worst case scenario, such that we don't have to come back to you again for additional time.
All righty, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Thank you. Thank you, Chris. I need a motion to approve the extension.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you. Next item is item number 6, the Union Station Tunnel Rehab Design Services. And I would ask Jessica Mefford Miller and Chris for comments on this.
I'll ask Chris to address item 6.
Awesome. Sorry. Modification Masters was hired to design the replacement of the Union Station Tunnel several years ago. It's a very complex project involving work beneath the surface. And the original concept also had us opening up the top of the tunnel and replacing that. And the tunnel runs directly underneath the parking lot at Union Station. So we've completed that original design. We've done the work underground that we can, several different packages of work, such that we've built some walls underground that will support the new roof and remove some asbestos, electrical improvements. We built a new communications room. So the next step for the original design would have been to take off the roof, essentially, of the tunnel and replace it, which again runs right across the Union Station parking lot. So we've been trying to negotiate with the owners of Union Station for many years. Unfortunately, we have not been able to come to terms for an easement to do that work. So it's determined at this time, based on the time as well as the monetary risk, that we'll just modify the design and do what's called a major rehab of the tunnel, such that we're able to complete all of that work from underneath, and we will not have to open the top. So in order to do that, we have had to ask Modification Masters to revise their design. Much of the design that's already been completed, obviously underground, can stay. But we're just going to do as much as we can underground, rehabilitate everything that we can. So we certainly will extend the useful life. We estimate about 15 to 20 years, but it won't be as good as the original plan, obviously, to open the parking lot. But again, based on the risk of acquiring the easement, how much time and funds that may take, we believe this is the best approach. So this briefing paper seeks a modification from Modification Masters to their original design contract, which was $4.5 million. This modification is for $1.065 million to revise their design and do all the work underneath and basically make it a major rehabilitation such that they don't have to open the parking lot. Questions?
I've got a question, and good morning. Chris, you kind of alluded to this, but this has been an ongoing long-term problem, I think, since I've been on the board. And I'm fine with approving this as it is. I just would like to know, one of the consequences of not being able to replace it how we had tried to do, is it that the project's going to take longer? Is it's going to increase our costs? I mean, can you just let us know that?
Certainly. The cost will probably be a little bit cheaper, not much, to do it the way that we are, such that we're not improving the roof. The consequences are it won't last as long, and it's not as complete of a rehabilitation. You know, if we had built the new tunnel, we would expect it to last 50 to 75 years. With a major rehabilitation, such that we're able to do it. We're not able to get to some of the members because they're embedded in concrete and they're just impossible to get to from below. So we're not able to replace or rehabilitate everything. So again, we're expecting this to last 15 to 20 years. We've designed it such that if we're able to come to agreement sometime in the next 15 to 20 years, we can just take off the top at that time. So we're building the abutments beneath underground. So that'll be very easy. Again, if we're ever able to come to terms, we can replace the roof at some point. But yeah, the difference in value that we're losing is just the duration that the repairs are good for. It'll be 15 to 20 years now, as opposed to 50 to 75 years if we did the full replacement.
Got it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And a key part of the strategy, Commissioner, is to really limit what really more is the legal risk. So although we have the rights to have an easement, the unknown is what is the amount of the damages, okay? And the damages in this case, it's my judgment that could put us more at risk to pay for an excessive damage claim if we were to open up the lid right now. And so we had to kind of shift gears and move on with the project and do it as is. So that's really the kind of determining factor. So not just the engineering, but trying to limit the risk of a potential claim on damages to the Union Station operation.
I have a question related to how this is going to impact service. So when is the work going to be done, and how much service interruption is to be expected?
So we have two basic packages. One is a structural package that will start. We'll go on the street probably next week, and then a major package which we'll be designing with this change, that'll go on the street and be a bid next summer, which will last about 2.5 years. So it will just have to be fit in with the calendar. So it'll be, you know, mostly single tracking at night after peak time is over, from 8 until the start of revenue service the next day. Depending on how the contractors try to do it, we may have a couple weekend shutdowns over the course of the 2 years. We haven't finalized that yet because we haven't finished the design yet to figure out how that they may or may not be able to do all of the rehabilitation. But for the most part, it'll be single tracking when it's allowable. You know, obviously we're avoiding cardinal games and that type of thing, the usual calendar.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Hearing none, I ask for a motion to approve the changes.
Motion.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you. Item number 7 is the 2020 annual surplus property holdings report. And I'd ask John Langa from the real estate department to give us some comments.
Commissioner, thank you. I'm here along with Jeff Braun in my office, and as this goes, we'd be happy to answer any questions you may have. The purpose of today's presentation is to submit Bi-State's annual surplus property list for your consideration and referral to the Bi-State Board of Commissioners for approval. This annual submittal is per board policy and purposely put in a format also for use in the triennial review with the FTA. Furthermore, Bi-State board members are provided a list of the properties to keep in their own excess property book here at the end of the year. This year, there are 91 surplus properties that are not required for Bi-State transit nor airport purposes, and therefore may be disposed of and are in this excess list. And again, Jeff and I would be pleased to answer any questions you may have on this.
Any questions?
Yeah, I have a question for John. What happens to this surplus property?
couple things. One, Commissioner, a number of these properties are on the list every year. I'll call them cats and dogs, a small amount of property that might be at the edge of a right of way somewhere. And a lot of those are these. At the same time, there are properties that are specifically put forward for a disposition. I'll call it active disposition. One of those is the case of Hangar 5 at the airport that is on this list. That's coming up here in 2 presentations to talk through. But specifically in that case, we've had interest from a group that would like to acquire that property and move forward with the development. We did the same thing, for instance, with the DeBoliver properties about 2 years ago when they came on the list. So basically it makes them eligible for development purposes. In the case of some of the properties, they're very small, de minimis value, and frankly, de minimis interest. They're just literally at the edge of some right-of-ways, things like that. There are a few, though, that lead to development.
But this Hangar 5 one you're talking about, that's not just a little easement on the edge of a roadway or?
Absolutely not. It's a hangar site that will be coming up here for development conversation in a few agenda items from now. Yes.
Fine, thank you. Thank you.
Other questions? I just have a brief comment, John. It would be helpful to know when you do the report. I don't think we need to know the exact square footage or acreage of the size of these parcels, but if you could note which ones are actually, of developable size, or because I can't determine from here the value or the size of any of the properties. So, or if you can just include that in your report moving forward, it would give us an idea of what our real estate holdings actually look like. And it's difficult to tell from this list.
I'd be pleased to, and also that full list is also encapsulated in each of the commissioners' books, where it has a detail about each of the properties that is in that list. But I'd be happy to give a little bit of a summary to that also.
That'd be great. Thank you. Hearing no further questions, may I have a motion to approve the annual surplus property holding list?
So moved. Second.
Thank you. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Can you give me a call?
Any abstentions? Thank you. Next item is also for John Langa's comments, and it's the Bi-State Development Research Institute dissolution.
Yes, thank you. The purpose of today's presentation for the committee to confirm for referral to the Board of Commissioners for approval of the Research Institute's actions related to the dissolution of the Institute as such may affect Bi-State, and approving the Institute's Board of Directors. The Institute voted to disband at its meeting on September 8th. With this action, there are several steps which will involve Bi-State, including Bi-State completing any related corporate filings for the Institute with the feds in the states of Missouri and Illinois, and Bi-State accepting the Institute's donation of any current assets. Of note, the Institute's donation of the 2 kiosks mentioned in the briefing paper finalized on October 7th at about the same time as the briefing paper publication, so that kiosk donation item would not be a portion of any motion moving this item forward. It is likely that the Institute could be fully dissolved this fiscal year, and we will work with Lashley Bear on those related filings. In the meanwhile, the final Institute board would be comprised of Larry Jackson as president, Barb Eniken as secretary, Toby Roach as treasurer, and Commissioners Rose Windmiller and Herb Simmons, both as members. I'd be pleased to answer any questions you may have on this item.
Any questions? Hearing none, thank you, John. A motion is needed to approve the dissolution.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you. Next item is number 9, the St. Louis Downtown Airport surplus property holdings. Again, I'll ask John Langa for comments.
Thank you. The purpose of today's presentation is to have the committee consider and refer to the board for approval the declaration of Hangar 5 at the airport as surplus property, and that it be conveyed through the airport's competitive process for demolition and rebuilding, either through a private developer or the airport itself. Hangar 5 is a 6,200 square foot hangar on a 22,000 square foot site. The hangar, built prior to 1988, is in poor condition and would cost considerably more to renovate than it is worth. The hangar is rented month to month, and at this time, the airport has received specific interest from a party to demolish the old hangar and rebuild a new hangar for their use. Further, the airport believes the site could hold up to 3 hangars. As with other hangars that are owned by others at the airport retains the ground with a lease underneath the hangar and collects rent off that ground lease, which is typically on a 40-year term. And at the end of that, the hangar reverts to airport ownership. So the action of the committee and then board would enable the airport to proceed with the development process for this site. I'd be pleased to address any questions you may have.
Questions for John?
Do we know what type of business you're talking about going in there?
It's a company called Carine and Tilley. Actually, they're Carine and Tilley attorneys, and I strongly believe it is for one of their corporate jets.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I have one for Toby.
Yes, sir.
Does this have anything to do with the discussion that I had with you last week? Or is this something separate?
It's separate from that, sir.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions? Hearing none, may I have a motion to approve the St. Louis Downtown Airport surplus holdings piece?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you. Motion carries.
Thank you.
At this point, I'd like to turn the meeting over to Commissioner Zimmerman, and he'll proceed with the rest of the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I'll go ahead and proceed to agenda item number 10, which is a contract modification for the extension of contract with Cigna Healthcare, medical plan administration services, and stop loss insurance coverage. And I think we'll have Chuck Stewart or Dave Tobin if they want to walk us through this.
Commissioner Dave Tobin, our Director of Benefits, will give this report.
As noted, I'm presenting on a briefing paper under item 10, which is a contract modification extending our current medical administration and stop loss insurance contract with Cigna for 1 additional year. The current 5-year contract ends on December 31st. In early 2020, the Bi-State Development Benefits Department initiated a strategic analysis focused on developing high-value healthcare purchasing strategies. The objective of that was to craft a multi-year strategic plan that manages healthcare funding challenges while continuing to provide innovative health plan benefits that attract, retain, and reward our employees. The resulting strategic plan relies on selecting innovative vendor partners, which was actually delayed by the pandemic. Management is recommending we retain our current medical plan administrator and stop loss insurance carrier for the plan year of 2021. In negotiating with Cigna, they have agreed to maintain the current administrative fees and provided a stop loss insurance quote within our expected and actual budgeted ranges. Therefore, we recommend that the Audit, Finance, and Administrative Committee forward to the full board for approval our recommendation to extend Cigna's medical plan administration and stop loss contracts for 1 year at a not to exceed cost of $1.5 million. I'd be happy to take any questions.
Does anybody have any questions for Dave? Hearing none, can we get a motion to approve this agenda item?
Simmons, so moved.
Second.
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right. Agenda item number 11, the contract award, health and welfare consulting services. And this one, we'll see if Chuck Stewart or Anita Dunn has any comments.
Commissioner Zimmerman, Anita Dunn will present this report. Anita is our Health and Welfare Manager.
I think you're on mute.
I think you're on mute, Anita.
Sorry. So in reference to agenda item number 11, I'm here to provide you with information related to the RFP process for the Health and Welfare Consulting Services and ask that you refer our recommendation to the Board of Commissioners to award a 5-year contract. Through a joint RFP process with the Bi-State Procurement Department and the Benefits Department, a solicitation was issued which resulted in 4 proposals being received. The evaluation committee, which spanned a number of our different departments throughout the organization, reviewed those 4 proposals and assigned technical scores. All 4 of the firms were invited to give us in-person presentations, after which those technical scores were finalized. Subsequent to that, the cost proposals were reviewed by the procurement department and the appropriate scores were assigned. As you can see from the exhibit on page 2, the incumbent, Arthur J. Gallagher, had the highest technical score and the highest cost score, and therefore the highest overall score. Therefore, it's our recommendation that the Audit, Finance, and Administrative Committee forward to the full board for approval our recommendation that the 5-year Health and Welfare Consulting contract be awarded to Arthur J. Gallagher for a not to exceed amount of $500,000. And I'd be happy to take any questions that the board may have for me.
Any questions for Anita? Hearing none, I'll go ahead and ask for a motion to approve this agenda item.
Moved.
Second.
All those in favor of approving agenda item number 11, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes. The next agenda item is the modification of contract awards for general legal services, and we'll have our General Counsel, Barb Enneking, speak.
Barb, I think you're on mute also.
Yeah, Barb, we can't hear you. There we
I'm
go.
sorry. Good morning, commissioners. Thank you. Thank you for that. The item before you this morning is a request for modification for the contract award for the general legal services. It's a request for an extension of time. The current contracts, most of them expire in November of 2020. As you know, we typically go out for an RFP for legal services about every 5 years. We anticipated going forward with that RFP process this spring. Everything got delayed because of the pandemic. And so we're just asking for an extension of time of the current contracts through the end of June so that we have sufficient time to issue the RFP, do all the scoring, and come back to the board for approval of the new contracts as well as execution of the contracts with all the various law firms. It's a kind of a lengthy process, and we just want to make sure we have enough time to do that and have continuity of legal services. So the recommendation, so that we're just requesting approval of those extensions. Any questions?
Barb, just one. So have all the firms that we're currently working with agreed to continue their contracts at the current rate?
We're going to be contacting all of them after this meeting today, presupposing a recommendation for approval. And so they generally, all the firms we work with have been, very cooperative. And so I wouldn't anticipate that we would have any issues.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Yes,
Barb, could
Commissioner.
you provide us with a list of the firms and the addresses, which states they are currently in, the ones that we use now?
Certainly, I'd be happy to. In the attachment is the listing of firms, but I can get you a supplemental listing with that information. I'd be happy to do that,
Very good. Thank you.
certainly.
Any other questions or comments for Barb? Hearing none, I will ask for a motion to approve agenda item number 12.
So moved.
So moved. Second.
All those in favor of approving agenda item number 12, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Any abstentions? Hearing none, the motion passes. The next agenda item is number 13, the pension audit updates. And I'll see if we can get Chuck Stewart to give us the update this time.
Yes, it's my turn now. Thank you, Commissioner.
Perfect.
I've been introducing everybody else. Well, as usual, we have good news about our pension plans. UHY LLP has completed the fiscal year 20 audits of our salaried IBW and 788 pension plans. All reports had clean opinions, as we're getting used to around here. So that's good news. That is an informational item that I'd like you to take forward to the board. Other thing I'd like to report on is that our 401k audit for 12/31/19 is in process, and UHY is doing that audit. And our valuations for fiscal year 20 are also in process. They are performed by Milliman, and we assume that we'll get those sometime in the November time period. Just a brief update, our HERO program is alive and well and moving forward. As you know, we had 117 members of the salary pension plan participants that were eligible for this program. Program goes through November 30. At this time, we have a small number of people that have committed in the low to high teens at this point, but we continue to provide them with information, with support in their decision-making process, and we're assuming that we'll get good results as we move forward with this. So that is my report for today, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Just to clarify, if I may, Commissioner Zimmerman, the HERO program is the early retirement offering.
I'm sorry. Yeah. Yes. Highly enhanced retirement option.
Got it. That's good to know. And please providing us updates on that obviously very important process that you guys all are proceeding with. Anybody have any more questions or comments for Chuck on this issue? All right, hearing none, I guess that's informational only, it appears, so we don't need a vote. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Then it appears agenda items 14 through 16 are reports prepared by our internal audit department, and they're informational only. So if anybody, I think Angie Steichoff should be here, and if anybody has any questions, or if Angie has any kind of high level significant updates for us, we'll undertake that now. Hey, Angie, how you doing?
Hi. I don't have any. These are our standard reports that we issue every quarter. So unless anybody has any questions, I don't really have any comments on them.
Got it. That's what it looked like to me, but I always want to give everyone else a chance. If they have a question, give them an opportunity. So does anybody have any questions or comments on agenda items number 14 through 16 before we move on? All right. Well, it was informational only. Thank you so much, Angie. So I'll
Thank you.
Continue on to item number 17, which is the treasurer's report. And Tammy Fulbright's going to handle this one.
Good morning. So I briefly want to talk about the cash and investments. The treasurer's report is behind tab 17, and I do want to discuss the fuel hedge a little bit this morning. So I am going to have you turn to that when I get to that point. On page 3, there's a summary from June to August of our cash and investments. And at August 31st, we had by state directed funds of 210 million with an average rate of return of 13 basis points. We are currently in the process of rebuilding a 3-year laddered portfolio. So in August, we purchased 31 million in investments with an average rate of return of 11 basis points. Most of those were very short-term investments, and they are also included in the report. In addition, for by-state trustee-directed funds, we had approximately 68 million with an average rate of return of 1.63%. What I want to note here is that we did make our principal and interest payment on 10/1. So as you see future reporting, you'll see that that balance will reflect that. And the principal portion of that amount, which we pay once a year on 10/1 for the transit bonds, was approximately 10.5 million. So I want to ask that you please turn to page 7 behind tab 17. And this is the fuel hedge report that we currently produce. We are going to work on enhancing this report and also the entire treasurer's report over the next year. But what I want to draw attention to is on this report, it gives you that first column is a monthly recap of what happened, then the year to date, and also life to date of the fuel hedge program. It began in 2004, so that information is within here. If we walk through the year to date, what you'll see is that our gallons purchase is less than what we actually budgeted for. The price at the pump is less than what we budgeted for. So we budgeted for $1.99 per gallon. We're getting about $1.30. But the purpose of the fuel hedge is to keep us in line with the budget. Not to make money, but to balance the budget. So the impact of the fuel hedge on this, so when you see low prices at the pump, generally the fuel hedge is going to cause that price for what we actually spend for fuel to go up. But the advantage is when the pump price is really high, it should bring that price down and keep us in line with the budget. So currently what we're seeing for actual year to date is $1.86 per gallon price. So I just wanted to draw attention to that, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Tammy? Hearing none. Thank you so much, Tammy. Again, this was informational only, so no vote is needed. The next agenda item is number 18, and that's the Bi-State Development 2021 to 2023 Strategic Plan, and I will turn it over to Toby.
Good morning, commissioners, and I'm going to share my screen for this. Very good. And we'll move. So just very quickly, we are, as you know, moving through a strategic planning process through our partners, Contractor Experience on Demand. They've done an excellent job. I've been very pleased with really kind of the messages that we've gotten out of this and the momentum that we're starting to build. So I'm really trying to just quickly give you an idea of how that is going. So this is a very brief presentation about that. So of course, what we're talking about first is a phase 1 in February to June, working and looking at surveying and get a baseline for where we need to go. So that has, there's a huge component of surveys, and we have circled back on all of our employees and asked about some of the fundamentals on building our culture. This is also included in several of you answered some surveys, both from the Board of Commissioners and some outside surveys that informed where we're headed. And then moving into the strategic plan is that we put the input in, and then from July to October is really when we start talking about execution of this plan. And we're headed in that direction right now, obviously. So just very quickly to talk about, you see obviously the internal surveys, we consolidate the findings, we move into the strategy workshops, and then we come to the strategic plan. We're really between the blue and green parts right here, and then now talking very seriously about execution of the plan. So what's really interesting is that we've been able to develop, some of the really key pivot points for us as an organization. And these are some of those. So these vision statements and mission statements have been developed jointly, okay, from an internal cohesiveness of our employees through the guidance of Experience on Demand. And quite frankly, it's been refreshing and very interesting to try to get an idea of what those are. So you see, obviously, a vision statement, a more connected and vibrant and thriving region. Of course, remember, this is for bi-state, so not just transit, but also the other business entity. A mission statement, improve the quality of life, St. Louis region by delivering excellent public service to a dynamic regional system. So I think that those are really important keynotes to where we should be driving as an organization. But in any plan, there is some segmentation to try to work into our key goal areas. And just to very briefly talk about those, they're really in 4 areas. 1, customer experience, and that includes a grouping that is headed by Jessica Medford-Miller. Of course, we all know our focus on safety and security, and I'm leading that individual group. We've been grinding away on that, but grinding away so that it's more than just a transit-oriented safety and security, that indeed it's a culture that goes through all aspects of the organization. And of course, Chuck Stewart has been heading the culture. And what's really interesting about building a vibrant culture here at Bi-State is being passionate about how does that go through all aspects of the company, whether those are racial components, socioeconomic components, all of those issues talking about in a healthy environment and a healthy work environment. And then of course, fiscal responsibility. No matter what, look, this is a public company, and stewarding those funds is always going to be a key aspect of any strategic plan. So I know that was very brief, and I want to be very respectful of your time, but I thought it made sense to be sure to let everybody know exactly where we were in the process. And with that, I'm going to pause and ask for any questions. I think we do have members, and I want to thank both Chuck and Larry for their stewardship of the strategic plan so far. And basically what I'm telling you is that we are moving along, and I think we have good progress. And with that, I'll pause and see if there's any questions.
I have a question. Toby, so you're between development and implementation or execution, how are you going to measure the effectiveness of the plan? Because I didn't see anything about evaluation in there.
Yes, well, of course, there were some things that fell off, Commissioner, just for the interest of time, but there are a huge amount of metrics on there on how to measure ourselves. A lot of those are oriented towards survey type data, where we're continuing survey with a baseline and then seeing where we are. And for instance, just to be to think about the perception issue, obviously perception of security is something that we're dealing not only with the public right now, but also the internal messaging and so on. So we will be handling that very thoroughly from a survey component, but there are other key metrics and what are mentioned as key KPIs or key performance indicators, which will also be incorporated into the process. And those are more like ridership and some of those other fundamental data pieces that we need to incorporate a little bit more strongly as we're measuring our march through strategic planning. The focus on this strategic plan really will be over the next 20 to 24 months with key leaders in that area driving the organization towards innovation. And measuring that progress is really a key aspect. I'll be happy to share a little bit more detail on that with you. once we get that through, but I just wanted to kind of give you a brief synopsis.
Thank you.
I've got a question.
Yes, sir.
Hey, Toby. Were there any questions specific to the board that were included in that, or was the board kind of lumped in with maybe management? It's just anytime I'm out getting a tour or I'm out, on the line, it's always interesting to me to talk to some of the employees and see what they, what they think or what they know about the board.
That's a great point. So quite frankly, if you look at, and there's a little detail on that in your internal, in the larger board packet on the survey results, and some really interesting of the top 5 positive responses and the top 5 negative responses. And some of those, it's really key, is a lot of our employees are looking for that interaction from executive leadership. Okay. And quite frankly, I think that executive leadership includes the board. And they'd like to see more presence of us, in the facilities, interacting with the employees and working on our communication. So that's definitely a key aspect of that. I will say, for instance, Commissioner, let's use as an example, you went on, and thank you for that. You went on the security tour with Kevin Scott. As an example, your presence and leaders' presence on the system, those messages go out to all of our employees. I mean, people talk about that. They say that obviously the leadership is interested. So I think it's a very key point. It's something that we need to work on, and it's definitely presence in the fundamental data about how we interact and work better as a team at all aspects.
Interesting. And if you have any actual survey questions or any of that feedback, I'd be really interested in having you share it with us as you kind of progress along this. So thank you for that.
Yes, sir. Will do.
Mr. Roach, yes, I very much applaud this effort. I think it's spot on. Obviously, the execution part's critical. I like that you included the top 5 positive survey responses and the bottom 5. I think as we move forward, it would be important to come to agreement with the board on a set of small set of metrics on each of the key priority items that we can take a look at each board meeting and chart our progress on those.
Yeah, yes, sir. I'll be happy to do that. One of the things that we are considering as a team is also assigning a project manager. So quite frankly, you saw the leaders of those individual groups, including myself. These are very busy people. We have a lot of work to do right now. And one of the things that we've been concerned about is, with the strategic plan, do we have the bandwidth to really have someone who's driving it? So I think it is very likely that we move to assigning a specific project manager who then would be accountable, for instance, to the board, indeed, who probably would be making this report, not me. And I think it's a great idea, because tracking and figuring out where we are is a really key component. And I think trying to drill that down to a set of reports that we can put our arms around is a really key component to being efficient. So I've made a note of that, and thank you for the input.
Oh, thank you.
Any other questions or comments for Toby? Again, thank you, Toby, for that. I thought it was very interesting, and look forward to further updates on that. But it's informational only, so no vote is required. The next agenda item is number 19, the draft fair program policy direction. And I think Jessica Medford-Miller is going to walk us through this.
Good morning, commissioners. Thank you for your time. I have a couple of pretty big high-level items to preview with you this morning. Neither are items for action, but rather my intention today is to provide you with critical background information on initially a planned update to our FAIR program. These are draft plans, and we're sharing this information with the board today to allow opportunity for input and to provide important background information before we actually create plans that would come into public view or release requests for proposals for things like equipment. Now, per our board policy, it's chapter 90, section 010. the board must approve any fare program, any fare policy, fare structure, and then per procurement practices, we would be coming to the board throughout the life cycle of this fare collection program to seek approval for contracts for things like equipment and software purchases. So before we bring you those disparate pieces of our fare program, I thought we would take a walk through what that program looks like and give you a preview of what's ahead. So just a little bit of jargon, so we're all speaking the same language. Our fare policy is really the framework or foundational components of our fare program. It establishes things like our goals for passenger revenue proceeds and our values and how we want to structure our fare payment. Our fare structure creates the types of passes and discounts that we are offering. The fare pricing just prices each of those items within our fare structure. And then our fare collection system is that system of hardware and software that we're using to actually collect passenger fares. Our motivations for updating our fare policy now in 2020 and 2021, and by the way, last update was in 2012. Number one, we have to ensure as we move on, as Mr. Roach mentioned, fiscal responsibility is one of our paramount tasks here at By State Development. We have to ensure that the revenue that we're bringing into our organization is adequate to support our ongoing operation. And of course, there is no time in recent past, more like the present, where we are focused on fiscal responsibility and financial sustainability. Customer and community focus is also critical. We know that in order to stabilize ridership, to attract our customers back and to retain ridership, using transit has to be convenient, it has to be easy, and it has to be attractive. And fare collection can be a barrier to using transit. It's not often a tool to induce transit utilization, but it sure can prevent people from using our service. And then finally, equitable access to our fares and transit services is a critical consideration as we think about structuring fares, setting prices, and then making that fare media available to populations across our service area. And when we think about equity in fares, we're thinking about equity for young and older customers, minority customers, low income. We look a great deal at how people have access to technology and financial resources like banking. And that's going to be reflected in the draft proposal I share with you in just a moment. So today I'm going to preview a proposed fare structure and pricing. This would be a departure from our existing fare structure and pricing. The process for moving through this fare program is today getting feedback from this board. We would take a fare policy structure and pricing proposal to the public. We would have a pretty extensive review and comment period before bringing a final recommendation back to this board to seek your approval. And then we would move forward on implementation. So we're still very early on. One of the biggest changes that we are proposing shifting to is something called a flat fare based fare structure. And flat fare would be different from our existing system in that we're eliminating transfer surcharges. We're collapsing some of the different fare categories and eliminating some of that penalty for many customers who are transferring between modes. And going back to our fare policy, this is a very important consideration for equity. So this policy would hold that we don't penalize customers for making multi-vehicle trips across our system. As we know, many customers do by virtue of just the distance between places like home and workplaces across the region. And the way our system is designed to try and efficiently transport customers across 650 square miles, transfers are often required. So we want to eliminate that transfer. And I would note that temporarily, as part of our pandemic response, we've suspended issuance of that paper transfer aboard Metrobus in favor of a mobile ticketing solution to avoid that hand-to-hand contact between operators and customers. It is my hope that we will move swiftly to replace that paper transfer and not have to go back to that paper handling, which causes a lot of challenges with infectious diseases, but also with fraud and theft. Of course, our fare structures, we have different structures that apply to all of our different service types. But here we're really talking about leveling fare structure between Metrobus and Metrolink. Our customers use those modes seamlessly, and there may not be a great deal of sense in creating different fare structures for them. Our fare payment options moving forward, they're going to continue to include cash. We cannot penalize customers for not having access to banking or other means of payment. We want to limit paper passes, though, to just a few products that would be vended by ticket vending machines, and try and shift customers more to longer term durable fare media like magnetic stripe cards that would soon be replaced by a stored value smart card, as well as mobile applications, all of which can be account-based, so tied back to a user profile. And that's going to be very important for implementing things like fare capping, which I'll talk with you about in a moment. We would continue to offer passes, single trip options, and then we would shift our focus to try and expand our volume programs. We have a monthly pass and a university pass and semester pass, and right now, those are really critical for growing and sustaining our ridership. We want to expand that, though, to create an employer pass program. And we know in conversations over the last couple of years with major employers across the region that they need a card and a back-end system for managing the distribution of Metro Transit fare media to their employee base before they're ready to begin an employer pass program. So we're moving forward swiftly on that. And then we would also be offering different options that apply to customers based on the frequency of their use. So if you're using transit 20 days a month, a monthly pass is going to be an option for you. But especially as we shift our understanding of how people are traveling in the post-pandemic environment, we also need to make using transit easy for customers who are traveling just 2 or 3 days a week. And so we would be offering specific options like pre-selling books or segments of one ride tickets or segments of one-day passes. Okay, now fare pricing. We have different levels. We've got a limited number of individuals who ride the system free, including children under age 5. And then in Illinois, they have a special program that allows their residents age 65 and older to ride for free. We propose continuing our half-price discount programs for children, seniors, and individuals with disabilities or who participate in Medicare ID. Future possibilities that we should undertake, and we should have a conversation with this board, include a youth fare, so those children who are over the age of 12. We've previously piloted a program called Gateway Go in the last couple of summers. It was very successful prior to summer 2020. That was targeted at youth and really helped connect young people to options like jobs and recreation opportunities. It's been a popular program. An option that we don't offer today that's a little more complex, but we're seeing a great rise in within the industry is low income focused pass programs, as well as programs focused on special populations like our veterans. We also have the opportunity to do promotional days like fare-free days on election day or some other special event, and that's relatively easy to implement. And then, of course, we've got full fares, volume discounts, and volume discounts really come into play for employers, for a not-for-profit partners, and our convention and visitors market. That is a very strong part, especially for our summer market. And then finally, fare capping. Fare capping would be brand new to our system. And what fare capping is for an account-based system, whether that's mobile or a stored value card, it can detect how many times you're using transit over the course of a day or a week and cap that fare. So if you're paying $3 for your one-way trip to work in the morning, and you're paying $3 when you get on that bus at the end of your work shift, it's going to cap your daily fare at $6. If you want to stop off on your journey home and go to the store or make a couple of trips, you would still be capped at $6. So there would be no additional cost. That's especially important for our lower income customers who are not typically paying the price of a monthly pass or a longer duration pass. And I want to take a quick look at fare pricing. I won't spend a great deal of time on this. This is outlined in the briefing paper that we shared with you. But this is a proposed fare restructuring and pricing strategy that could be implemented as early as 2021. We arrived at this fare structure and this fare pricing after a great deal of modeling. We actually engaged a firm called 4 Nines. They are a firm that specializes in transit fare collection to look at our ridership, to look at our existing utilization of fare media, and propose strategies that would allow us to continue to grow passenger revenue in a responsible way. A second phase, when we're adopting fair pricing, by the way, we're typically adopting a new pricing strategy and outlining our next steps in the years to come. We would go back to board approval before implementing that second phase. But especially when we're talking with the public, it's helpful to have a conversation of what we would implement near term and what would be implemented long term. So again, the base fare is our primary. We're growing that one-day capping a little bit and then growing our volume passes, our weekly and monthly passes over time. The idea really with our growth in passenger revenue is that it just keep pace with our growth in operating costs. And then finally, fare collection system. The technology, the hardware, the software that we put into place really has to flow from that fare policy and that fare structure. So we are in the process now of designing a request for proposals for the first piece of our next gen of fare collection systems. And that first piece is electronic payment, by the way. So we have a network of fare boxes. We've got about 487 fare boxes. We have about 125 ticket vending machines, I think 170 standalone validators across the Metrolink system. And those will all be scheduled to be replaced. We use Federal Transit Administration's obsolescence schedule, by the way, and that's 10 years for heavy duty equipment like fare boxes and ticket vending machines, and 5 years for lighter duty equipment like validators. We would only replace this equipment once it's beyond its useful life. Now, what we have right now in a very limited capacity is an electronic faring system. And this would allow us to have an effective smart card program, have an integrated mobile ticketing program. So we've got a smart card, this functionality is limited, and we have that mobile ticketing pilot. It's temporary, also limited. But where we're going next is putting out an RFP for replacement of that electronic faring system. We would like to have a system that has account-based integration. Customers can use mobile or stored value card. It would be easily reloadable online, and we would also be able to manage the distribution and monitoring of those cards or media, and that's going to help us with relationships like employers. We hope that this will help push more of our customers to stored value media and away from cash utilization. So let's take a step back and look at the timeline. I want this board to understand what the process is, and we'll be coming back and having conversations. As I mentioned, we're preparing that RFP. We're going to have that out this calendar year for our electronic fare collection system. We would come back to this board in early 2021 for approval. And actually, we expect to begin operationalizing this system in 2021. I want to note that we are taking a different approach with procuring our technology for fare collection than we have in the past. We are looking, rather than best of breed for different components and choosing many different vendors, we're hoping to achieve much greater integration. And the fare collection industry has come a long way in a short amount of time. And we're seeing vendors, because they want to be competitive, proactively integrate with peer vendors across the industry. For example, that Masabi mobile ticketing pilot program that we stood up that in June of this past year, it was less than 3 weeks from issuing a notice to proceed before that was launched. And we made a requirement for the mobile ticketing vendor to integrate seamlessly with transit apps so customers could have a seamless plan and pay platform. And that was done very quickly. We're looking for a similar responsiveness with our electronic faring system. Now, fare policy, we will go through a Title VI and public participation program. We would come back to this board late spring, early summer of 2021 to request a decision on fare policy. And after that, once the fare policy is in place and once the electronic faring system is in place and we can achieve that capping, we would begin with that iteration 1 of changes to our fare pricing and structure. The latter part is replacing what I would call our heavy duty equipment. That's our ticket vending machines and fare boxes. We would be releasing an RFP for that equipment in summer of 2021, moving through a procurement in late calendar year 2021, and the purchase and implementation of that equipment upgrade would be in a 2022-2023 timeframe. It's a large program. It's a complicated program, but I hope I've been able to outline this today so that you have an understanding of what's to come and may be able to react to what we've proposed today. At this time, I'd like to take any questions or comments.
Yes, I have some questions.
Yes,
Go
Commissioner.
ahead, Herb.
Jessica, do you know offhand how much we've invested in the smart card program?
Commissioner, I don't. The smart card's one component of the overall fare collection system. We've achieved functionality for most of our desired aspects of the smart card program. As this board is probably aware, we did abandon further development of things like a third-party reloading program and a back-end website.
Do you know how many cards, smart cards were issued?
I don't know offhand. I'd be happy to get those numbers for you, both cards issued and cards actively in use. So we have a functioning smart card today. It's not the smart card we had hoped because we don't have things like that third-party reloading and that online reloading.
So I would ask if we could get, I'd like to know what we've invested in a smart card program and how many of those cards have been issued. And then you mentioned the Masabi program. Do you know what commission they charge for their service?
No, I don't know offhand. There are a couple of different charges. There is Masabi's fee, but they're really obtaining their commission via credit card processing fees. But I do have a summary of that. It's a little more complicated than one number, but I'd be happy to share that with you.
Yeah, I'd be curious to see if that's what that compares to what the standard ticket system is at the stations. If they're paying, someone had told me it was like 16% commission.
So I don't mind telling you, we are paying more, and that's how Masabi is actually generating their revenue from our program. So they're developing this front end and back end ticketing program, and they're recovering their revenue. So the cost to support that development and integration with our other technology through processing fees. So it's a volume-based charge.
And I appreciate the presentation. And but again, I think from my memory, the smart card program costs quite a bit of money. And here we're moving forward. I just think we need to carefully, as you've said today, it's going to be a long process, and I don't want to rush into anything, because if the smart card program was a failure, from what I've heard from some people, then I don't want to be making those same mistakes as we move forward. So I appreciate the comment of you saying this is going to be a process that's going to take some time.
Sure. So with respect to the smart card, we really have two different options for proceeding. We have the option of trying to proceed with that Indra. Indra is a Spanish company that supports the back end of our fare collection system and smart card. We could try to proceed with Indra and continue to try and push for the integration and the development we need from them. And patch that along, if you will, or we could, as we're upgrading our hardware, according to obsolescence, we could go a different direction. And I do strongly recommend going a different direction, because we've not been able to get the responsiveness from Indra, and we're using last generation technology. And I think that we select the fare collection system, not for today, but for tomorrow.
And again, I don't mean, and I know you don't have the figures, but some of the figures that I heard was there was like a $30 million investment
in our fare collection program, Commissioner, but
Yes.
that's not limited to smart cards. So that includes the most expensive components of our fare collection program or technology are the heavy duty pieces. It's the ticket vending machines and it's the fare boxes. So that $30 million very high magnitude figure includes all of the system components, not just the smart card.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions, commissioners?
I have a couple, but I did someone else?
You go ahead, Rose, then I'll ask
Okay.
mine.
So I did want to echo some of the things that Commissioner Simmons said, and I understand that the $30 million on the development of any kind of fare system, it encompasses everything. But the smart card was really expensive and the return on investment was really bad. So, we should just acknowledge that and understand that we don't want to make those kinds of mistakes when we move forward. The question I had was, this is interesting and exciting. Have you thought about how any of these new fare components are going to interact with or complement the possibility of other forms of transit, such as our, Uber program and things like that? Because I don't want to leave that off the table, because I think increasingly that's going to become important. So, and as you noted, we should be developing not only an infrastructure system, but also a fare system, pricing system that isn't designed for today, but is going to take us into the future.
Yes, Commissioner. So two-part answer. So with respect to integration into some of our other modes like transportation network companies or microtransit, the electronic RFP that we would be putting out this fall would include integration with fare payment, trip planning, fare payment, and trip booking. So we want our customers to be able to have a seamless plan, book, pay option in the same platform. So that will be a requirement. And we are seeing again in the marketplace vendors who are already doing this, some of our peer properties are already implementing this type of fare collection program. And rather than taking the onus for development in part on us, and there were a lot of elements of that kind of approach in the last generation fare technology, we're contracting with vendors to do it, who are more nimble and who are frankly better at this than we are, because this is their core business, right? This is a part of our business. This is not our core business. We move people and we need to contract with other firms who can help us do the plan, book, pay. And then second answer, Commissioner, is I think what we need to do is staff and I will work on a white paper that outlines our last fare collection program, including costs, limitations, and tries to differentiate direction. So we'll share that with the Commission shortly.
Thank you.
I appreciate the thoughtful and comprehensive approach you're taking to looking at fares and fare collection. Do you have a sense in terms of what percentage of the Metro budget comes from fares?
Yeah, we do actually. And we call that fare box recovery ratio, the percentage of our operating budget that is borne by passenger revenue. And our fare box recovery ratio in the present pandemic has gone from 15% to 10%. Historically, it's been as high as 18, 19%. So one of the critical questions for our fare policy is how much, whether that's an amount or a range, how much of our operating resources do we want to extract from passenger revenue? And we need to maintain a critical threshold. That fare policy must also define at what point we actually reevaluate our fare pricing and structure. For instance, in the current pandemic, this is good reason and good policy to have a look at our fare structure and think about what we want that to be. I would like to see passenger revenue return to a minimum of 15%. I want to caution, and we'll talk about this next, it's going to take us a little while to get there.
So a related second question, do we have a sense, a benchmark of similar type cities, what percentage of the revenue would be from passenger fare?
We do. And actually, I will include that peer data in the white paper that we share. And the short answer is there's a range. Right now, we're on the lower end. And as we've lost ridership over the last 5 years, our fare recovery ratio has declined to a point where it's become uncomfortable. We have other systems that have a higher passenger revenue. Your systems with very high ridership in very dense cities are going to have a higher fare box recovery ratio, and less dense cities like St. Louis are going to typically have a higher ratio where we're traveling long distances to move fewer people.
Yeah, so you're getting at what I want to get at with my next question. So two factors are in play here. You've got volume, and then you've got the cost to the consumer.
Yeah.
And the higher the volume, the more revenue, the higher the cost, the more revenue. You can control or manipulate either of those two variables. When you look at benchmark rates at other similar cities in terms of what the customer pays similarly for a single ride, a 2-hour trip a day. Before we vote on that, it would be helpful to me at least to have that benchmark data to see what we're charging a customer versus similar, say, Midwestern cities, what we're proposing. It would be good to know, I think.
Absolutely. We'll share that information.
Good. Thank you very much. Good report, Jessica.
Thank you.
Great comments on a very important issue. I had just a couple points to add for things that maybe haven't been covered yet, but you know, I like the goal and I agree with this if that's what we're trying to do, but anytime we can streamline things or push for uniformity, I think it keeps it simpler for us and simpler for the end consumers. And that I've always liked that. Fare capping is really interesting to me, and I think could be a great thing to do. I'd like to, if there's, you know, downsides to it, or, you know, obviously we might lose a little revenue, but I just think it really helps protect low-income people who maybe can't afford that, you know, $85 or $100 pass at the beginning of the month. So I'd really, I know that was listed on there, but I'd like that to be included, at least in the, you know, further discussion if it's not going to be done. We talked about the smart card. Herb hit the points on that. The current ticket vending machines, I don't know if I have the worst luck with them, but I've never found them to be user-friendly or that they work consistently. The one over at the Casino Queen, thankfully we have someone there typically that will take a cash payment, because I've tried to use it probably 3 times in the last 2 or 3 years and it never takes my card. So, and I'd really like to see what improvements we could make with those. Especially since, you know, frankly, the loop trolley machines are way better, and they're about 1/3 the size and they work consistently. Back when I was able to use that. So just a little bit of feedback from one person, but the people I've talked about with that also aren't huge fans of the ticket vending machines. So anyway, those were just couple quick points I wanted to make. Any other comments for Jessica? This is we could talk all day about it, but it's a really important issue. So if anybody has anything else to add, go ahead.
I want to respond just quickly, Commissioner Zimmerman. So
Sure.
Our duty equipment, our ticket vending machines and our fare boxes, we're asking them to do a lot of things today, and our fare structure is rather complicated. We've got a number of different products and a number of different media. So we will be moving toward a more streamlined fare structure with fewer gradations and fewer media, and we'll be asking the less of that heavy duty equipment. We're going to be vending fares another way and simplifying that. Noted on the ticket vending machine reliability, we do have a team that's out there working on them. Let me know if you experience any problems and we'll dispatch them right away. And I want to note that those TVMs have exceeded their useful life and are due for replacement.
Yeah, there's no way that was cutting edge technology 10 years ago. And I get we have budget constraints, but when you said we try to keep them about 10 years, I thought that some of them we've been keeping for a while longer. But anyway, I understand why. So any other comments or questions for Jessica? All right, I think Jessica's also going to walk us through agenda item number 20, which is an operations report. So we'll go ahead and let her do that.
So we'll shift gears a little bit here. And today I want to just spend our entire operations conversation focused on moving our operating program beyond the coronavirus pandemic. We have talked with this commission a great deal about our coronavirus response and our excellent safety program and the ways we have been adjusting operationally over the last nearly 8 months. But today it's important that we give you a little window into the process of trying to move our service, move our system and our business model beyond the pandemic. I want to remind us that as we began our pandemic response back in late February, we have been guided by 3 primary objectives. Of paramount importance is protecting our team members and customers, and continuing to provide meaningful, reliable, and efficient transit service while doing so, and then preserving our capacity to recover. So when I'm talking with our transit team, we are talking about preservation of staff, preservation of equipment, ensuring that we have what we need to recover beyond the pandemic, and it's going to be a little bit of a long recovery process. But let's focus today on recovery. So when we think about our operating plan, and that's service design, it's projects as well. It's also things like our fare policy and our fare structure. The things that we look at are our financial capacity, transit demand, and transit demand has changed. And in the 20 years I've been working in transportation, I have never seen such a dramatic shift in travel behavior. And we've got to respond to that. And we also have to think ahead as to how much of that change is going to stay and how much of it's going to go back to normal. Safety, and when I'm talking about safety here, I am focused explicitly in this conversation about safety in respect to with respect to infectious disease. And then our service program and design really responds to those first three items. And then our communication strategy is one of the tools that we'll be using to sustain and grow our ridership. So we know, and we haven't talked a great deal about this yet, but we will be moving in this direction. In addition to a global health crisis, the COVID-19 pandemic has presented a revenue crisis for many businesses, including transit. We rely on sales tax proceeds and passenger revenue, both of which have been impacted. We don't know yet how long the impact will continue. Of course, we're doing our best to estimate that and working with our funding partners to get our arms wrapped around that. We are fortunate enough that we are relying on our CARES Act appropriation of $142.2 million to buoy our operating budget so that we can continue to sustain service throughout and in the near term beyond the pandemic. But we know that we will have revenue impacts that are going to cause us to make adjustments to our operation. So we've got to bring that operating budget in line with our available revenues, simply put. I want to give you a preview on what we're seeing in differences to travel behavior over the last 8 months or so. Obviously, we've got fewer trips being taken across all modes in the St. Louis region. Some of the trends we're noticing is, of course, fewer trips are coming to places like here in downtown St. Louis or Clayton, where we have heavy concentrations of office employment, where most people aren't at work. We're pretty lonely here in this Met Square building, and that's true for large buildings across the region. We also know that people are leaving home less often, and you're probably experiencing this in your own life. So if you're going to make a trip to one destination to work or to a store, you might be going to 3 destinations to get that all done at once. And so we're seeing a lot of short trips at a greater proportion than we had in the past. And I want to note, going back to fare collection, that's really important for that fare capping item. We want to make it easy to use transit for all of your trips. In terms of time of day, our peaks are really pronounced and really heavily tied to shift work. So we've got early morning peak. We're peaking in the 6 a.m. hour. Historically, it would have been a little bit later. And then the same is true for our afternoon peak. We're peaking in the 2 to 3 p.m. hour rather than moving on to 4 and 5 o'clock. And the travel patterns of what I'll call our multi-purpose riders are very pronounced. These are the customers who have long or at least have recently used transit for most all of their trip making purposes. And we can follow, I'll show you some maps in just a moment, how and where and even when they're traveling. At an aggregate level in the current fiscal year, we're a quarter in now. Our ridership has begun to grow and stabilize. The month of September is actually pretty good. We came up year over year about 2% for Metrobus and Metrolink relative to FY20. We've still got a long way to go. So we're stabilizing right now at about 48% of pre-COVID ridership, or 48% loss, almost 59% loss on Metrolink. And paratransit has more or less stabilized around this 19-20% of pre-COVID demand. We're also, in addition to ridership trends, we are having conversations with our customers. We did a survey in late August, early September that asked customers specific questions about how they've responded in their metro travel to the pandemic crisis. Are they traveling more? Are they traveling less? What are the things that are most on their mind? And what we've learned, not surprising, that our infrequent riders, customers who rode 3 or 4 days a week or less, are most likely to ride less or not to ride at all. But our core customers, those multi-purpose customers, are continuing to ride, and many haven't changed their trip-making behavior. There's a notable change, and this is not surprising here in the St. Louis region, that across race, we didn't measure income in this survey, but we would find a very strong correlation that about 63% of our African-American customers report that they are riding just as often. And this is so important for thinking about equity as we plan and deliver our service and our fare programs and all of the programs that we're offering here at Metro Transit. In contrast, about 29% of our white customers reported that they don't have a change in travel. We also measured this across other axes like age and gender. In terms of safety needs, we asked customers, what is it going to take to get you to ride? What are you most concerned about? Top concern was mask wearing by other customers across the system. Enhanced cleaning is another, and then of course availability of sanitizer and enforced social distancing. Now, we've had the survey report for a couple of weeks now, and we have already begun making changes to our operation and our messaging to respond to these items. We're doing mass distribution blitzes right now. We've increased our messaging regarding mask compliance, and we're doing a lot of promotion of the fantastic safety programs that we're doing to keep our riders informed so that they know Metro is out here focused on making you safer. Let's have a look at ridership. So this is a snapshot of what ridership looked like pre-COVID. This is from October of last year. Just some of the trends that I want you to note. Frequency matters. Frequency matters pre-COVID, post-COVID, and beyond. Where we have frequent, reliable service, we're going to have a stronger market response. This was a hallmark of the Metro Reimagined service redesign from last fall. And not surprisingly, we've got a lot of concentration in ridership in our urban core. And by the way, these ridership dots are aggregated across census tracts so that they don't just appear at a bus stop. It would be harder to visually discern that. But we see a pretty dispersed pattern in ridership. So we've got concentrations in ridership patterns throughout the metropolitan area. And I want to note that because the ridership distribution looks different today. So here's where we're at today. So especially in our lower density markets, we're seeing less ridership. We don't have nearly as much presence in Greater South St. Louis County West and even Northwest St. Louis County. We're continuing to be strong in those high frequency urban markets. Route level, some of our university markets have of course dropped off, and we're expecting that to rebound as enrollment rebounds. This is September ridership, by the way. That's our last month of available data. So we're continuing to monitor this on a monthly basis. Now we're seeing strong ridership still where we have large retail destinations. Think big box shopping. Warehousing has actually grown in some markets, and that's, I think, a reflection of how people are choosing to obtain their goods. Healthcare generally remains strong, but we have seen a significant drop off at some of our major hospital destinations, including the Central West End. Now, some of that might be the university impact, and some of it is the health impact. In Illinois, our core urban ridership or core urban routes remain strong. And I just want to note that Illinois hasn't seen quite the depression in service level that we have in Missouri. I also want to acknowledge that our ridership response is in part a function of the amount of service that we've been providing. We're up now well over 80% of our pre-pandemic service level, but that was not the case back in the months of April, May, June, when service was substantially diminished. So as we think about our guiding principles for service design pre-pandemic and what we're learning as we move through this process, we know that now more than ever, we have to deliver an excellent service. It has to be attractive, secure, safe, comfortable, and easy to use. If we don't offer a world-class customer experience, customers will not choose Metro, and we need them to come back. So now more than ever, our team is doubling down on our customer focus. Social equity has been paramount. I want to bring it more to the fore, though, of our conversation. We know that transit is essential for so many people in the St. Louis region. We've got a little bit better data on where and when and for whom it's essential, thanks in part to the ridership patterns of the last several months. So that's got to be at the fore for service design and fare policy. We're going to continue matching service types to communities. Now, we started this with Metro Reimagined a year ago, And we'll continue to look at the demand footprint and make choices about what type of service, whether that's fixed route, high frequency, community, micro transit, a transportation network company, so that we can deliver the most efficient and compelling and attractive service option across our market. We're going to continue our safety practices. We've got a strong program. We're making some transitions in those safety responses so that they're sustainable over time, because cleaning, disinfecting, social distancing is going to be with us for a while. And we're also looking at our special markets. I want to note in particular our paratransit markets, our disabled markets, and looking for ways that we can make their service more efficient. We were on this path pre-COVID, and we're going to continue that. So how is this going to play out on the ground, and what and when are we going to see this? So our target for stabilizing service, when I say stabilizing, I mean the service level that we roughly anticipate operating for the next year or so would be in summer 21. That's our target, June 2021 specifically. And at that point, we anticipate stabilizing at roughly 90% of our pre-COVID service level. So you'll see some changes to service design and service frequency. That stabilization is to align service more with demand and available financial resources. We're going to continue testing and implementing some of these new mechanisms for delivering mobility so we can match that service to markets. And as we evaluate our recovery over the next year or so, we're going to continue to focus on ridership, but we're going to have to look at other measures of success as well. Customer feedback, impact on the community, feedback from our elected officials, key stakeholders, and other partners so that we know how we're doing and whether and to what extent what is actually working. The value of service, the impact it makes on people's day-to-day lives and economic success, it's hard to measure through ridership, but we've got to have conversations about the value of what we bring to the St. Louis region. And as we think about service design, we are also working on welcoming customers back, because it's not enough to put the service out there. We have to tell a story, and we have to make that service attractive. We'll continue our safety practices, and we're going to continue keeping our thumb on the pulse of customer sentiment so that we know what their top concerns are and we can respond swiftly. Our messaging has been evolving just as quickly or even more so than our service in recent months, so that we can continue to push out core messages at each of the different pandemic and post-pandemic recovery stages. We want to know what's on people's minds, and we're going to message specifically to that. So that's going to take some continued market research and monitoring. Outside of service recovery, we're also really trying to build brand affinity, or as I like to say, we're putting positive capital in the bank when it comes to the Metro stories. We are continuing to build and also leverage relationships with key partners across the region. You know, just yesterday, we were at our Brentwood Metrobus facility hosting a media conference with our partner, Ameren Missouri, about our electric bus program. And that kind of co-branding and partnering is going to help build affinity for the Metro brand, and that will pay dividends when it comes to ridership in the future. We'll continue this rhythm of positive targeted messages focused on service recovery, but also the other great and exciting things we're doing here at Metro Transit outside of service and COVID. This is a challenge. This is the greatest challenge we have experienced within this organization in at least 10 years, but it gives us an opportunity to rethink our business model, how we provide service, and how we communicate with our customers. We're looking now out to FY 2022, but recovery might impact us beyond that. We're preparing for that and trying to be as nimble as possible. I want to commend, before I conclude, I want to commend our team. The Metro Bi-State team has done a fantastic job of responding, of working diligently, and demonstrating their commitment to keeping the St. Louis region moving for our customers, and at great cost. We have had over 100 positive COVID cases amongst our team, but we're recovering from that and stabilizing, and we've got a strong workforce coming to work every day right now. So we are prepared to respond, and we will continue to move forward. That concludes my presentation. Again, a lot of information at a high level. What questions do you have or concerns?
I have some comments. Believe me, I understand response and recovery, and here in St. Clair County, for 216, this is I think our 217th day today, we have been trying to get our message out there to our citizens that this virus is serious. We were able to go back last Friday to our phase 4 mitigation, and we have seen every day since then for the past 7 days the positivity rate increasing daily. So I understand what your report is, and I really appreciate it. But I don't want to give false hope. This virus is still with us. It's going to be with us a long time. And what we are seeing is people they're tired of it. They're complacent, and now it's kind of like it's disappeared like a light switch. So I think we've got to keep that message out there. I was glad to hear you saying that, all the safety procedures that's been put in place by your staff is going to remain, because more so now than ever, we have to keep our foot on the gas. Otherwise, we're going to be back in the same place we were several months ago.
Yes, Commissioner.
I have something I'd like to kind of ask or whatnot, and because you were talking about travel behavior and customer experience, and you were talking about feeling safe, and definitely agree with that. When Commissioner Zimmerman and I were checking out things and doing our security tour and riding the trains and that, one big item that the security brought up was during these off hours, do we have all the cars open? All right, because there's only just a handful of very few number of riders on these off hours, and it's easier for them. Is what I was taking it is if we can get the passengers in one car, again on these off hours, not on the peak hours like you said at 6. We're talking about late night, early morning, things like that. I was curious on your thoughts on that and where we were with that.
Yeah, we had a look pre-COVID at operating 2-car consists and off periods. There were some limitations to that. We're often running single tracks or station shuttles and off-peak periods, so after 8 p.m. And so that makes limiting capacity in the core between Forest Park and Fairview Heights a little bit difficult. It wouldn't have worked well with pre-COVID ridership. It's worth having a look at now with post-COVID ridership levels. We would have to ensure that we can provide adequate social distancing on a 1-car consist. It would be still connected, but the doors closed on the rear car. So that's an active conversation internally.
Okay, because I mean, it just doesn't seem like that big of it shouldn't take months and months and months to figure it out. It should be something fairly simple to come to an agreement and figure out, just as long as, I guess we're listening to our security folks, and if they have something that, that we act on it, if it makes sense.
Thank you.
And I can comment on that too. Here in St. Clair County, we have had that discussion with our security people, as Commissioner Cox said, and I just received an email the other day where that is definitely being talked about. At first, there was some discussion on those back cars could not be locked down for some mechanical reason, but evidently, I think that's been looked at also.
Yeah, we can close the doors. It wouldn't make sense for us to decouple those. That
Right.
would just be tremendously laborious.
Well, and I think one of the other reasons that was brought to our attention over here was security reasons. Some people just felt it was more to be in that front car as opposed to being in the back. So
Yeah,
I think it's something we need to really look at.
Yeah, I think there's some advantages, but disadvantages too. And it still requires security being present on the car, because we can't expect the operator who's looking forward to be responsible for security behind them.
Right, and then that was the point that the security was making, is they can't be in all the cars. If the train pulls up, it's just the first car that's open, and these are, again, the off hours. If 1 or 2 riders gets on, we know who's there. We have security there, and not in all the other cars in the back. So to me, it's fairly simple and common sense just to understand. So I just wanted to bring that up and see where we were with that.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other comments or questions for Jessica? Hearing none. Jessica, thank you so much for that update. And
Thank
we'll
you,
go on to, yeah, sure, to Toby's report as agenda item number 21.
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm trying to be aware, we had a lot to get through on our agenda, some very important items. I hope you agree with me that we've kind of tried to stay to those things. And I will follow up on the rear car aspect. What I think I'll do is, I do have kind of a report on the where we are on CARES funding. It's actually good news. We are tracking well with what our assumptions are along with sales tax. But what I think makes sense is, since I do have about 8 very important slides to go through, I want to forward those to you so that you can take a look at them and then see some questions, and probably defer that to next meeting, since, well, we're already 10 after 10 at this point, and we do have an executive session to get through. So I'm going to defer those comments today. I hope you understand why. And I will, and that'll conclude my report at this point. And we will follow up on the second car issue at that meeting as well. Okay.
Great. Sounds good. Any unscheduled business, Toby? None. Okay. Anybody else have any unscheduled business? Myra, could you announce the upcoming dates for future meetings, please?
Yes, the next Security Subcommittee meeting will be held on Thursday, November 12th at 8:30 a.m. And the next Board of Commissioners meetings will be held on Friday, November 20th at 8:30 a.m.
Thank you. Now I need a motion that this committee go into executive session for the purpose of discussing legal, confidential, or privileged matters as permitted under Bi-State Development Board Policy, Chapter 10, Section 10.080 D1, Legal, D3, Personnel, and D10, Audit.
Motion.
So moved, Simmons.
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Simmons,
Yes.
Commissioner Brown,
Yes.
Commissioner Beach,
Yes.
Commissioner Cox,
Yes.
Commissioner Winmiller,
Aye.
Commissioner Costello,
Aye.
Commissioner Johnson,
Yes.
Commissioner Galladay,
Yes.
and Commissioner Zimmerman.
Yes.
Motion passed.
We are ready to proceed. Thank you.
Great. The committee has reconvened to open session. Pursuant to board policy, no final action votes will be taken in closed or executive session. Therefore, do I have a motion to approve the meeting minutes from the August 27th, 2020 executive session of the Combined Operations Committee and Audit Finance Administrative Committee meeting as a closed record?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Winmiller,
Aye.
Commissioner Brown,
Yes.
Commissioner Simmons,
Yes.
Commissioner Zimmerman,
Yes.
Commissioner Costello,
Aye.
Commissioner Johnson,
Yes.
Commissioner Cox,
Yes.
Commissioner Beach.
Yes.
Motion passed.
Do I have a motion to approve the intercompany accounts payable riverboat operations item as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Costello,
Aye.
Commissioner Simmons,
Yes.
Commissioner Winmiller,
Aye.
Commissioner Zimmerman,
Yes.
Commissioner Brown,
Yes.
Commissioner Cox,
Yes.
Commissioner Beach,
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson.
Yes.
Motion passed.
Do I have a motion to approve the draft year-end financial audit as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Winmiller,
Aye.
Commissioner Johnson,
Aye.
Commissioner Simmons,
Yes.
Commissioner Cox,
Yes.
Commissioner Brown,
Yes.
Commissioner Zimmerman,
Yes.
Commissioner Beach,
Yes.
Commissioner Costello.
Aye.
Motion passed.
Do I have a motion to approve the draft procurement card program audit as presented?
Yes.
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Simmons,
Yes.
Commissioner Beach,
Yes.
Commissioner Costello,
Aye.
Commissioner Winmiller,
Aye.
Commissioner Zimmerman,
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson,
Yes.
Commissioner Cox,
Yes.
Commissioner Brown.
Yes.
The motion passed.
One more. Do I have a motion to approve the draft audit of the failed DOT medical exams as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call vote.
Commissioner Beach,
Yes.
Commissioner Brown,
Yes.
Commissioner Zimmerman,
Yes.
Commissioner Winmiller,
Aye.
Commissioner Cox,
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson,
Yes.
Commissioner Costello,
Aye.
and Commissioner Simmons.
Yes.
The motion passed.
If there's no additional business, do I have a motion to adjourn this meeting?
So moved.
Meeting is
Second.
adjourned. Have a good weekend, everyone.